recording it because it's happening already, and I love it.
I'm gonna cut out in a second. Oh, wow! It's
like a grand mall.
Oh,
You look like a Dollar General gift.
oh, it's back.
Well, Michael Vaughn and one and all, and thank you for joining us on The Literary Baptists, a podcast where we examine great works of literature through the lens of the confessional Baptist. I'm here this evening joined by Nick and Maddie.
Hello.
How are you all this evening?
Great.
We are Zachless this evening. Once again.
Again.
He and his family are going there and back again, but they're still on the there part.
Yes.
And I think where there, I actually don't know where there is, but it's somewheres. So may the road rise up to meet them on their journey to wherever they're going. I had to say that because we're recording on St. Patrick's Day, so I had to throw something into this other than my green room.
Yeah, where's your Protestant orange?
Yeah.
Man, I have an orange bow tie. I honestly almost put it on just for this. Although my bit of Protestant orange is actually this. You're just gonna kick me. It's like a pocket protector.
You have an orange.
I have an orange
Pokemon
pocket protector.
Yeah,
I have a Pikachu. It's like a patch, like a Velcro patch.
Yeah.
So I can replace it when I want, but I put Pikachu on there because why wouldn't you? I am wearing a Pokemon shirt tonight, so I am like staying true.
You're
to
all
form.
out.
Nothing says St. Patrick's Day like Pikachu.
That's right. That's right. You know, people say he drove the snakes from the Emerald Isle, but it was really just to make room for the Pokemans to come there and make their home.
I was gonna make a joke, but I forgot all my Pokemon knowledge. Oh, he drove all the Arboks from the island.
That's right.
Oh, finally got
Goodbye, Arboks.
it. Takes a long time. I got to reach back into my
the Ekans as well.
Ekans, yeah, which is snake backwards, I guess.
Yeah, very creative naming back there in the late
Arboks,
80s, early 90s.
Cobra
is Cobra, but with a K.
Yes,
makes it interesting.
Yes. I had to reach back in time. Try to remember when I collected Pokemon cards during the great Pokemon card era.
Yeah, but before there were Beanie Babies that took everybody's attention.
I think it was it? I think it was after Beanie Baby era.
Was
I don't know. I think so.
Well, I don't know. My timeline on it is weird because my older cousin was an early adopter of Pokemon stuff, so I was aware of Pokemon way early.
It was definitely after Pog era.
Pogs. Yeah, that was even before my time. I had to learn about those on television.
Those were cool. They were circles of cardboard.
Yeah, that was like second grade for me, I think, was Pogs.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I don't even remember what you did with them.
You had a slammer and you'd slam it. And then the ones that flip over, I don't know if it was, I can't remember if you had the colored side up or the cardboard side, but you hit it and then the ones that flip over, you
are out.
Give it to the person, or I don't remember how it worked. But you had a slammer that was made of metal.
Was it Pog? I can't remember if it's the company that made those, also made those tiny little footballs that were also cardboard that you would sit on the table and flick them and they would fly.
We just made those out of piece of paper. Back in my day, we just made those things ourselves.
No. When I was a kid, I saw them. They were at stores, and they had footballs designed with different NFL teams insignia, and there was like a little thing for touchdowns. The thing that you kick the football through.
We would just do this.
Yeah.
No, there. Well, yeah. For
just do it with your fingers.
Paper one. Yeah.
Yeah.
With like
do
the
it with
folded
their
up
fingers
paper.
and then.
Also, not a touchdown, just so you know. But
no, but it's in the end zone. The big T thing in the end zone.
Yeah, it's in the same area. We're good.
I hate American football. I'll just go on record. I can't stand it.
Clearly.
So I don't know what any of the stuff is. I just know everybody runs around with padding on and still gets hurt somehow.
Yeah,
It's
they
called
do.
a grand slam.
I disdain. I do always contend that baseball is the greatest American sport, and I have not been dissuaded from that yet. So
Bad.
Anyway.
Speaking of March Madness.
So have you seen the video where the like local newscaster is talking about it, but she gets it mixed up and she's like, something about, is everybody ready for Match Madness on live television? So on Sunday, there were like a lot of, especially like the teen boys at school are really like we're working on their brackets. And I'm like, oh, is this for Match Madness? And I got the payoff I wanted. Everybody laughed. So it was probably a pity laugh, but it's okay. I'll take that.
It's a good one.
You got to do what you got to do. So we have a chapter of the Silmarillion to talk about tonight, but I also had a gripe that we had been talking about before we hit record, and I wanted to flesh out and maybe even show some IRL examples from our own bookshelves. But I have a big beef with bad cover design. And this is a problem that also has plagued the works of J.R.R. Tolkien over time as well. But so it is somewhat Tolkien related. But I went to a half price bookstore a couple weeks ago and was going through the shelves, and they have a mixture of actually truly used books, and then they have like overstock books, where they have like 3 to 5 copies of the same book and they're all mint condition, brand new. They've never been held by another person. And so there's like, you get this weird cognitive dissonance of like old books next to brand new books on the same shelf. And I kept seeing these books that have these, like, especially the spines, but when you take them down, it really hits you. But like big, bright colors with no real shape. They're like amorphous, ombre colored shapes where it's like purple into red or like blue into green or whatever, or have weird like abstract humanoid shapes in them as well to like kind of figure people. And I found this this blog post called "There is a Major Problem with Modern Book Cover Design." I'm gonna share the screen right now and show those examples, because this is exactly what I was seeing at the stores. I didn't see these exact books, but so like you can see like it's all about like big pops of color, and weird titles. Like sometimes I think titles are getting worse as well, but these are all real books that are on the shelves right now, and they just make my eyes bleed. I don't think they don't say anything about the stories themselves to me, other than like these two down here in the bottom right. Like okay, this is about couples, I suppose, because there's a man and the woman in each one. But the skin we're in, and it has like vaguely human silhouettes, but in strange colors, and it's like bright pink and bright orange, and it's just like it's like an in real life way to like get clicks, like whatever clicks are that you would get online, whatever I guess the version of that in real life is either just to, I don't know, get attention, or get them to buy it. But I don't see why this would make someone buy a book, but it certainly wouldn't make me buy it.
I think a lot of what the book cover designs are based on is modern advertising trends. Like those last two in particular, and definitely that second to last one, they're just like you. the figures look like the ones that you'd find, when you're when you're in the help pages for Facebook or like Google or something, and they have those weirdly shaped humans that are, always doing something really happy and something or other. They kind of look like that. They're abstract. They're more focused on just kind of shapes. But even if you go back in time, books have been always kind of related to the time. Like if you look at a book from the 70s, you can say that is a book from the 70s sometimes.
Yeah, you can.
And I think that's a big part of it. I actually have a book that it's a book from, I think, the late 1800s, but it's a few of Plutarch's lives, and in it are advertisements to make it cheaper. It's got an advertisement on the back for like Nestle's milk on the back of a copy of like Plutarch's Life of Alcibiades.
Wow.
So, that it is tied a lot to advertising of that time and what they're doing to advertise products. Sometimes they can look great. That's a segue over to this, Lee.
Yes. So this is so the Hobbit, the version of the Hobbit on the right is the 50th anniversary edition, and I believe the one on the left is the 75th, maybe. Can't remember, but this is an anniversary edition. So what's interesting, like exactly what you were saying, like about a book that's from the 70s, you can tell this is so clearly from the 70s, like badly costumed man, weird mummy looking monster behind him, which is supposed to be Gollum. And then
he looks like the Nosferatu
yeah.
vampire.
Yes, with the white eyes and the big nose.
Yeah, Bilbo looks like he's fresh out the Shire, not after having eaten scraps for a little while.
And he's a little dewy. Like I think he's sweating hard in the cave there, because like his cheeks are pretty not only red but like kind of dewy. That's some weird cave light. And I don't know, like it's weird. The cover is black. I don't know if that's supposed to be the blackness of the cave or what, but obviously this design on the left is much better. I believe that's a sketch that the professor himself did, which always helps. The banner with the dwarvish script is a really nice touch, and it just lends. So I guess one of the things I like best about the Hobbit cover on the left is that it does center you with a sense of place. In this, and it relates to the story, like being in the mountains. They go through the woods. It's got parts of the story already on the cover, so I feel like I'm getting prepped for the Hobbit, maybe even getting some of the scenery in my head before I even start reading it. I think actually I have my copy of the Hobbit over here, which has a slightly different cover. Yeah, this harkens back to some of the original design that the first edition covers had. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So this is my paperback. It's actually a pretty new one. But very same thing. Getting, the mountains are there. You're getting the eagles of Manwë. Nice little foreshadowing there. They're not normal eagles. They are Manwë's eagles. They do not work for you or anyone else. But yeah. So yeah, cover design makes a big
more like
difference.
Taxis.
You're a heretic.
Just hail them. Hey,
eagles over here.
Ride.
Over here. I need a ride.
Mordor, please. What's the fare?
He's got a little like credit card swipe thing on his back.
Yeah. They use Square.
Yeah. Oh yeah, or you can pay with an NFT if you want.
Yeah. Oh yeah, probably.
So in talking about this, I scrounged up some bad covers from my own library, and if you want to show some of your own, you can. The bright color thing definitely brought me to this. So I've read quite a few of Haruki Murakami's books, but again, this has the weird bright color thing, no relation to the story whatsoever, and it's just in the spine, like you can see it's got that same ombre color, purple to pinkish red to yellow. It's just meant to jump out to your eyes, but it communicates nothing. And then this is actually a very good sci-fi book, Speaker for the Dead. You have to have read Ender's Game to understand this book, but man, what a terrible cover. So it looks like it's some sort of like space station-y looking building with little ships around it. That has absolutely nothing to do with the setting of the book at all. It's just like, it almost reminds me of if you made one of the AI art things, make you like a Blade Runner picture. Like that's what it looks like. The follow-up to it, Xenocide, does the same thing, except it's even more nebulous. There's like a planet in the background and a little ship down there, and that's it.
That one's awful.
Yeah, this is a
really
truly
bad.
horrible book cover.
The letters going down as well, rather than having the left to right for the title, having to read it down like that in the middle. I really don't like that one.
You've got all this
Take
black
it down, Lee.
space.
I don't want to see it anymore.
Don't want your eyes to burn anymore.
Yeah.
A recent cover design, again, of a book that I love, Children of Dune. This would be a great design otherwise. There are two kids that are the center of this story, the titular Children of Dune. One is on one side, the other is on the other. It says something about the book, but the colors are all wrong. There is no reason why they should be pictured this way, except for that current cultural meme of high contrast, big pops of color. Like this happens in the desert. Desert is not purple. You know, even if you take a little creative license and talk about like early morning light or something, it's just not that color. But it's meant to fit that, whatever the book design meme is these days. It fit that mold.
Yeah.
I have a picture that I saved off the internets that I saw the other day in one of my literary groups. And it's actually Whose Body by Dorothy Sayers.
Those have terrible
I'm hoping
covers.
I could show you with my phone screen. It's like, I'll have to like send it.
A lady?
It's a lady, like
with a white dress.
A white dress with like kind of ruffles and a pug and a rug, and she's got like a bonnet hat on. It just makes
there's nobody of that description even in that book.
No, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's like they got the wrong book.
I think they did.
Like put that picture on there. It doesn't make sense at all. I would be very confused if this was the book that I picked up. And I would be like, when do we get to the lady with the pug on the rug? Like, where does this happen? Forget this dead guy shaved in a bathtub. Where's...
But you know, so even though the other covers are ugly, they do tell you about the story. It's got the pince nez at the top, or however you pronounce that. I didn't take French. And then is that how it is? So dumb. What a stupid language. The bathtub at the bottom, like it tells you right up front what's going on. It's evocative, but it looks horrible.
Oh, there was another. Are you the one? Were you the one that had the cover, the Whose Body? That was like definitely not from that era. It was like an 80s. Or my
the one I had looked like it was from the 80s, but I had no proof that it was.
There was I saw another, apparently Whose Body has like really bad covers, because there was another one where I was like, didn't even fit the description of the story either. I need to find that one so we can post that. But
yeah, okay. I can put it in the show notes.
I have an old cover of Clouds of Witness, the second.
That one's
And
cool.
there's not
I
much
love
to
that.
it other than the words and then a little design, but it does just look better. I think
it's stately. It's got symmetry to it too.
yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
part of why I like that one Hobbit cover as well, because it had like symmetry. Like if it's not going to be like a photograph, because like some book covers do have photographs, like I think Penguin's really good for that. Like picking a very good photograph and putting it on the cover. Sometimes it's a picture of a painting. Sometimes
it's usually a painting.
Yeah.
This is one with a photograph. I think that this is a great book, but this is an awful cover. J.I. Packer's Knowing God here. This one has like
is it a sunset?
Yeah, it's
it's like a gray green
there's an ocean.
sunset.
There's an ocean here. And there's some rocks, and then you can kind of see an island in the distance, and then the clouds. Just great book. Not a great cover.
It's got that dated design.
Yeah, it looks like it's from the early 1990s. The advertising from that time had kind of weird photography with it as well.
I picked a book off my shelf that I think has great design, but I'm actually worried, and I want to get your opinion if you think this is going to become dated in the decades to come. So this is Reformed Preaching by Joel Beakey, and it's got that very like, I don't even know what you want to call it, super symmetrical. It's got like an elevated pulpit in the front, like in a Puritan church with the stairs on either side. Yeah, serif font. Is that going to be dated?
I think so, but I do think okay, there are some periods where yes, it looks dated, but they were objectively better.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think the early 1990s, like this was not a great period for cover design. The 1800s, I think they did a pretty good job. Even when they put Nestle Swiss milk ads right on the back of the covers, or
which does make me want to drink some. Not gonna lie,
more ads on the inside.
Oh wow!
The book is a brochure, basically.
Yeah, but that was to make it cheaper. And even the 1960s, like this is a book.
Yes,
C.S. Lewis, Anthology of C.S. Lewis, A Mind Awake. It's just text, but the way that they have done it, I think it looks classy. It's I wouldn't go so far as to say it's beautiful, but it looks classy.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
And I think that's something that what that Beakey book had. I think that will last. I think it will be, that's late 2010s, 2020s, but I think it's going to be one that people will go back and say like, yeah, that's good.
Good design could be reminiscent of a particular era, but still be good.
Yeah, I think so.
Beauty is timeless.
Yeah, it is.
I can't not show it, but a great cover design recently is another Tolkien work, The Fall of Numenor. It's hard to show on here, and of course this is absolutely riveting podcast material. So definitely you're gonna have to check this episode out on YouTube. But this is a painting of the Fall of Numenor, which, spoiler alert, there's a place called Numenor that fell.
And it's in this book.
Yes. And so, but what I love, so this painting, I think it's by Alan Lee. So the city, so the main city, the capital of Numenor is here, and a big honking wave is coming its way. And so it's gonna obviously, engulf the whole place. But they tilted it on the cover, so you have an extra layer of chaos, and you're seeing things not from the perspective of the city, but the perspective of the wave. The wave is straight up, but the city is tilted. And so it like embodies the chaos of that moment when Eru Iluvatar sinks the island.
Rings of
It is
Power spoiler there.
phenomenal. Yeah.
I
You
really
might
like
be-
whoever was designing those, because I have for mine same thing, Alan Lee. This is the Tales from the
from the
Perilous
Dangerous
Realm.
Oh, Perilous Realm, that's it.
And I think they did a really good job of incorporating the art, and like the colors are coordinated. It's not like too contrasty.
Mm-hmm.
It's not too busy. And
And
some
that
good
dragon, dang.
Yeah. I mostly ordered it because it had the dragon on the cover. I mean, obviously it's Tolkien, but I saw the dragon. I was like, buying now.
It's a
That's
great
good looking
dragon. Yeah.
Yeah. Versus my various Lawhead collection going on over here.
Oh boy.
So this one's like, it's almost so old that it's becoming a little bit more classic.
Yeah, because it's no frills.
It's like classic 80s.
Yeah. It does.
I don't know. I don't really like all the little fonts and like trying to put the little blurb there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe that's because we're too like impatient nowadays. Like I don't want to read that. I don't want to have to read a little line there.
Blurbs need to stay off the front covers, because that
Yeah.
was one of my beefs with the Orson Scott Card books I showed earlier, because one has this thing that looks like a sticker that's not on it to say author's definitive edition, and then the other one, the black space is taken up when they could have written the title left to right. They instead wasted blank space on this little blurb, which is just dumb.
Yeah. It's weird.
Yeah.
Are,
Strange.
are there any good Lawhead covers? That's not one of them.
Then you've got the guys with the mustaches. Like very 80s.
So 80s.
It's like every time, I mean, I guess we're gonna feel the same way here in 20 years when we look back, but you watch like the 80s like medieval movies, or like they've all got the 80s hair. So it's the same thing that's happening with these
I fully
guys.
expect,
but the triangle, like that's what really gets me here, is you've got like some artwork and then you've got the guy's head in a triangle. It's just
I expect
weird.
the guy on the Taliesin cover to like call me brother.
Yeah.
He's got the Hulk Hogan vibe there.
He does. He has the exact same mustache.
This
I'm your
one,
king,
I was
brother.
hoping to find. That's partly why I have those books. I was trying to get more in this print edition, because they're a little more. I don't know. I feel like they follow a little bit better.
Those look good right now to me.
Yeah,
I can see that look dated, and everybody being like, "This is so 2010s."
This reminds me of like an early
2020s.
2000s like sci-fi TV show cover. But I was just really trying to get all my books to match, but that feels like it's not going to happen. So
yeah,
I'm just going to have the decades of Lawhead covers.
The one that the current Lawhead cover has for it is it does give you a sense of place, and there's an ominous vibe to the cover, so you're already getting treated a little bit to what's going to be going on in the book.
Yeah.
My favorite Christian cover actually in a while is actually this book by James Dolezal, All That Is in God.
It's got the Pantheon in it.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yes, because that's a temple for all the gods.
Yeah, I assume that probably made some people really mad that they included that. But
you have to recognize the building, but
it is a very sweeping image, looking upward, like it's forcing you to look upward. But yeah, I think that was an interesting choice, especially since people accuse people who believe in divine simplicity of adopting Greek philosophy into Christian orthodoxy, but that's another topic for another time.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of the covers that are giving the Renahans through Founders. Those are great. I've lent out the ones that I have, and so they're not with us to show, but I really dig those covers.
My
Those feel
judicious and
timeless
impartial
to me.
reader is actually out in my dining room because I'm using it for research right
Yeah.
now. But look at that.
That's beautiful.
I think that's going to be in the same category as that Beaky book that you had pulled out earlier.
Yeah.
I think people will still look at it as something from a certain time, but that will look good. I think that's a good looking book.
Pulling from the past already.
Yes,
they're
it
not
is.
doing
Look at that
something
typeface.
new.
Yeah.
They're. I don't even know what you
and that scroll work,
call that. Yeah,
like very very classic in a design sense.
Yeah, I dig it.
Yeah. Yep.
And they're metallic, usually kind of shiny. I like it.
Yep. More foil in the cover. Don't give us big saturated color. Just give us more foil.
Well, not this kind though. Not this kind.
Yeah. When a kid's book wins the Caldecott medal or whatever, don't put it on the book.
Yeah.
Please.
But this is still a good book. Knowing God by J.I. Packer is a good book.
Yeah.
Just this cover is awful.
Yep.
Don't judge it by its cover.
That's exactly what I was about to say, because you do run risks when you judge a book by its cover. But, a good book, you can judge the cover once you've read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I almost expected like 80s synthesizer music to play in the background when I was reading Taliesin, but fortunately
it wasn't there.
It was not there.
Yeah, I envisioned, well, whatever the in your head auditory version of envisioning is, but I auditory envisioned the original Blade Runner soundtrack when I saw The Speaker for the Dead at Half Price Books when I bought it.
That's pretty good soundtrack though.
Honestly, for an 80s movie, it was very evocative, and those synths were haunting in a good way.
Yes. Yeah.
No, you can definitely do worse on an 80s soundtrack than Blade Runner.
True.
Great movie. Well, thank you for indulging my my little Festivus session on book design. I needed to get that off my chest, so thank you.
And publishers, get your act together. That's what Lee says.
I got a problem with you people, and you're about to hear about it. Now, they'll have to go to YouTube to really understand, but but they will hear about it. Okay, so our next chapter in the Silmarillion is an interesting one. It was short, shorter than the others. It's chapter 4 of Thingol and Melian. Would anyone like to venture a summary?
Elway. Well, no, I guess it starts with Melian.
Yeah.
Was a Maya, which is that like the lesser angels or the lesser gods, and
I would consider
them
archangels. That's how I've always thought. So like
that's a good way to do it.
If the Valar are like demigods or like lesser gods to the one god, then they would be like highest level of like archangels.
She always has nightingales around her.
Of course.
Yeah, she decides once the elves wake up, she decides to come over to the I can't think what to Middle Earth, I guess.
Yeah.
And Elway, who does it talk about how his name is Thingol?
He just like acquires this nickname. Like, it's so weird. In Tolkien, everybody has at least 2 names, if not 3.
It was very confusing to me because it didn't really, it called him Elway through pretty much the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
He, and once again, there's a page and a half in my copy. He went out into the woods to go see his friend Finwë, and then came across Melian and just stared at her for years.
It's so like strange and romantic all at the
Yeah,
same
I
time.
can't decide if it is or not. I mean, like literally years pass and they don't speak. They just look at each other.
Well, we can't understand it because both of them are immortal beings. So
Yes,
that to them might have actually just been like the like awkward eye contact on a bus, you know, to their lifespan.
it's true. An important part of this, though, is that he was the leader of his people and he just abandoned them for this.
For
So
decades.
for decades, which for some of our leaders we might celebrate, but I don't think they were. And actually,
Yeah.
that's, to me, that was one of the things about this chapter that I wasn't sure about, is where do you order things? You know, if I was going to use Joe Biden as example, but he is married. But if, if like the leader of a country was just like, sees a girl on the bus and looks at her awkwardly and says, you know what? I give up, and just abandons what he's supposed to be doing for this
Boris
girl.
Johnson, he's an example.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Because he's not married. He's had several girlfriends over the course of his political career.
And his girlfriends do kind of like, well, they kind of influence his leadership.
Mhm.
But yeah.
So I have some thoughts. I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it. I guess it's a theory. But what this reminded me of, and I'm not super big up on like my Greek mythology, but with her music calling in, it really reminded me of the sirens, the Greek sirens. And was it the Odyssey where they had to like stop up their ears so that they wouldn't hear it? And it's not that she's bad. That's what's kind of confusing, is that she's not like an enchantress in a wicked way. Like she's not drawing him into doing something evil or dying or whatever. But she does, because it's an enchantment. Like he doesn't just decide to stay. He gets like enchanted. Like he's like in like a I don't know if it's a
he's in fairy at that time.
Yeah. Like time stops. I just like imagine like stuff swirling around them and they're just like staring at each other.
No, me too. That's how I think of it.
It kind of says that with the I think it says something about the stars doing that.
The stars whirl overhead, or however how does he say it?
Yeah, it's like basically time keeps moving on and they're just like frozen there staring at each other in this like centuries long.
Yeah, a spell was laid on him. Like it's very clearly an enchantment. But that's one of the things for Tolkien, because he will, based on the folklore that he uses, he often takes characters that are thought of as bad in that folklore and turns them good. So like elves and dwarves are both evil races in Nordic fairy tales, and elves are the noblest of the free peoples, and dwarves are basically adopted children of Iluvatar, like we've talked about in previous episodes. So I could see him definitely trying to do a similar thing with the idea of a siren, but instead of her calling you over to your doom, she's calling him over and is really going to take an incredibly active and pivotal role in the history of Middle Earth, having done this. Like this meeting, this union is hugely important to the rest of the events of not only the Silmarillion, but the rest of the history of Middle Earth.
Yeah.
The thing I thought was interesting too is the fact that it's Thingol that she goes after, because he's the king of the Teleri. And to harken back to the last Silmarillion episode, these are the guys who accepted the call to go to Amon and visit the Valar, and then they hit the woods and they're like, this is good enough, we're just going to stay here, and they lived in the woods. So they're the gray elves. And so in a real sense, Thingol, even though he didn't go to Valinor, didn't sail to the island of Amon, where the Valar live, truly Amon comes to him. It even says the light of Amon is in Melian's face. So he gets to see Valinor, and in fact, he really is better off. So there were elves that went and stayed, and they're kind of out of the picture. But for him, a little piece of Valinor lives in Middle Earth, and is in love with him, for as long as they both live, which is a really, really long time. And I think that's a beautiful picture.
It
A little
ends
bit
up being good,
incarnational.
but there's something that seems off about it to me. And it kind of reminds me of the stories that you have like this sorceress who's trying to seduce like the main character, and he has to get away from that. I mean, you kind of have a similar character in sometimes I mess up the Narnia books. The green, was she the green witch or something in Silver Chair? She has these words and she's able to pull, and she's evil, obviously, in that one. It seems like everything about her should be evil, and then she just doesn't, she's not. And so it feels off to me. Like, this is, everything about this is just like, oh, this is bad, this is not a good thing.
Yeah, I
But
really felt like he was intentionally flipping that around.
Flipping the script.
Yeah, because it's noticeable, like you said, like you expect somebody who's being enchanted and put a spell on, and they stop doing their quests that they're supposed to be doing and lose their kingship and all this stuff. Like, it's bad, but it's not bad.
but
It's
why
actually
is it
very
not bad?
good. Because
Well,
it's
it leads to
Christian,
so
that's
many
why.
good things later on. I mean,
But
for Thingol himself, it's good in a sense. Like, as the story progresses, obviously he has this big realm. I feel like they get too secluded. Like, he definitely gets very, like, he hoards kind of his kingdom to himself and his daughter and all that. But
Yeah, his kingdom is under a mountain,
yeah,
after all.
which is, I thought, weird reading through, and we're getting ahead of ourselves, but when I was reading that, I thought it was odd that an elf would be under a mountain. Like, that's not their normal way of doing things, at least in the era that
Tolkien's
we're
era.
used to.
I have two thoughts about that, but I don't want to step on anybody before I opine.
Go for it.
Opine.
So I think part of it is Tolkien is still indebted to the folklore that he's riffing on. So in all those old tales, elves do live under rocks, basically. And a big part of Irish fairy folklore, the puka, is all about rocks. Like, you'll find rocks that are fairy stones where the puka gather. So rocks and elves have gone together for a long, long time. Now he will, further on. I don't know exactly when this piece was written in this collection, how early on it was, but we'll see his elves will be less and less attached to mountains and more into forests, which is definitely more of a Tolkien setting than under a mountain. But also at this time too, the elves are in much better relationship with dwarves too. And so sometimes I think there's a little dwarvishness that rubbed off on the elves at this time before they have their big divorce, which I believe also involves Thingol, I think.
I believe you're right.
So yeah, those are just my two thoughts. And all of the elven kingdoms are hidden too. So his is obviously hidden because it's, under a mountain, but there will be special enchantments later that hide other. Well, actually, so it's not really a spoiler because it's part of the landscape, but Thingol's kingdom will be hidden by an actual physical range called the Girdle of Melian. So she, like, with her powers, kind of changes the landscape around the kingdom to further hide it. So that's one nice thing of having an archangel as your wife. You know, she can change the topography if she wants to.
I'm still like it still bothers me. All this still bothers me. It doesn't seem right. There's something that seems wrong. And the only reason I can get with him justifying it, with Tolkien justifying this as something that seems okay, is possibly that it is a higher level being that is telling, you know, that there is a hierarchy, and a higher level being is telling a lower level being, basically, this is better, this is good. And so there's a trust involved in that, like, I will give up the kingdom to trust the higher level being in this hierarchy. And in the same way, you know, like, if something that seems terrible to us, if God tells us to do it, you know, whether through some kind of special revelation, or, you know, something that's obviously clear from scripture, then we would do that, and we know that that's the right thing to do, even though it could seem weird if it was just like a person. If I came up and just was like, you know what, you should give up this whole like king thing or something, you know, it's different when you have somebody who's higher up in the hierarchy doing this, and she is. But then also there's the, like, a love story to it, which kind of puts them at not on equal terms, but it does equalize it in a way that makes me feel weird. Not to get into the whole David and Bathsheba debate.
on on the subject of trust, you're right, there is a level of trust there, because so Elwë, or Elu Thingol, which I looked up in this chapter, means is it King Greymantle?
Yeah, it's Greymantle.
King Greymantle. So it's kind of a title more than a name, but so, you know, so he is part of the Eldar who believed the Valar and accepted the invitation. So they have trust in the Valar anyway, and they know that the only one who is opposed to them is Morgoth. Now there are other elves that don't believe that and stayed and refused the invitation, and I think they become orcs, became the first generation of orcs. Of course, that's debatable, but so you're right. There is a level of trust there. He and the rest of his kingdom and the other elves that accept the invitation do implicitly trust the Valar. So there's a level of trust there for sure. But as far as the romantic piece, I don't want to jump on it yet. I want to see what everybody else has to say, but I have thoughts on that as I've reconsidered the chapter. Maddie, were you about to say something?
Well, I know, so I read a little bit, just I was trying to look up what her name meant, which was dear gift or something like that. Or beloved, I think, was another one. But it was funny, I scrolled through and I just saw, like, you know, like the Reddit conversations.
Yeah.
I clicked on some of those, and there were some people that were getting mad that she was described, I believe probably later on, because it really wasn't in this chapter, as submissive to Thingol. And of course that made people mad. You know, why did Tolkien write her as submissive? She's this powerful being. But there's definitely obviously that doesn't bother us as complementarians. But I will say, so like in this, back to the like reversal of order, you know, flipping the script, I can't help but pull Genesis stuff out, and I was like, this is like a weird reversal of like the Genesis 6, the sons of God, daughters of men, like is reversed. But it's that blending of the Maiar Valar with the children of Iluvatar, and it was almost like as if Tolkien took that in a good way. Like a lot of times we see it as a negative, like the
Mhm.
men of renowned, and
Mhm.
you see that's like, oh, they were bad and super evil and wicked because it's in the same chapter as the flood and wickedness. But you know, you could see that some people talk about just they were powerful rulers or whatever. So in some sense, I kind of got a little bit of those
Vibes.
Nephilim type vibes, I guess, but in a really kind of flip it, you know, did his own thing to it kind of way.
Maybe
I
that's
saw
why
it.
I'm comfortable.
I think no matter what, it's uncomfortable when the spiritual visits the natural, right? It's the veil is torn, you know, between the two realms. You know, they're not supposed to meet. You know, the spiritual realm is supposed to exist out there. The Valar are supposed to stay on their island, doing whatever Manwë tells them to do. The people, the children of Iluvatar on Middle Earth, you know, they're supposed to go about what the theme of the music has set out for them to do. Right? There's a whole plan. Eru has set all the plans out. Everything occurs just as it occurs in his mind, and never the two shall meet. But I see this chapter having some strong, although obviously a bit inverted, incarnation vibes. There's a particular plan for the children of Iluvatar, both elves and men, and the coming of Melian into the world and actually putting on flesh, right? It's a pretty obvious, I think that itself is an obvious reference to Christ. Obviously not a one for one because Melian's a woman and Jesus was not a man in his incarnation. Jesus was a man, he was not a woman in his incarnation. But her coming to Middle Earth, forsaking her place that she deserved in Aman, and being joined to, granted he's not mortal, but he's a created being of a lesser order. Her coming to his level of existence and staying that way. Granted, you know, she does live an immortal life. She's not subject to death the way that men are, but neither is he. But she does come to a lesser plane of existence. And there's a specific purpose for that. Some of it is bloodline related, and some of it is she is uniquely positioned to steer particular events that happen in history with her power, and because of her physical presence in Middle Earth. So I kind of see a riff on incarnation vibes, even though she's not the savior of Middle Earth by any means whatsoever. But she's more powerful even than when the wizards come to Middle Earth some of them at the end of the Second Age and others at the beginning of the Third Age. But she's even more powerful so she would be on the same level of creation as Gandalf, Saruman, the Balrogs. They're all Maya. But
Sauron.
she's in Sauron, right? Yeah, Sauron too. Can't forget that. Can't forget top bad boy there.
Halbrand.
Yeah. Ugh. Anyway, a Hakalugi. But she's more powerful than in more. I would say even more effective in the world than they are, and simply for one particular reason, the significance of the passage of time. Because
You
she's
pulled it in. You did it.
I'm good at this, you guys. but she gets to operate in Middle Earth much longer than any of those other folks do, and she's more powerful than Sauron. She has more time to do the will of Iluvatar on Earth than any of the wizards do. Even Gandalf, who got a second chance. And she's just a very powerful agent for the forces of good, especially in the First Age, obviously, which is a very turbulent time and truly needed the presence of Avala in Middle Earth. That's my take. I think it's a riff on incarnational themes that come in a very unique folklore type of way.
I think it's interesting to the name shift. Elway is like star, something about stars. And then he goes, kind of gets like demoted to gray mantle. Or gray cloak, because mantle's a cloak. So he gets cloaked. And
it gets cold.
Yeah. It's just a
he's
very
king of, what's it say? So he's king of the gray elves, the elves of the twilight.
Yeah.
So very much like, yeah.
Having been one of the elves of the light, like where he was, he'd seen the light of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
So, he kind of he leaves that and then stays there, and he builds up a good kingdom for himself as the story goes along, but then it ends tragically.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately. So I think that's just what's so fascinating about Tolkien, and I think what's hard for us is it's just a complex story. We want it to be like, and then it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually, this got me thinking, is there an evil enchantress at all in Lord of the Rings?
Enchantress?
Like, there's female spiders, but
yeah, I was gonna say Ungoliant. It really is pretty much an enchantress. She
Not in
plays
the same
some
way though.
She plays some big tricks on Morgoth. That's for sure. She hurts him big time. But I'm trying to think if there are any others. There was that evil queen that was surrounded by cats. But she didn't really enchant anybody. I forget her name. She hated cats, and yet cats came to her.
He probably wrote that about his like single lady neighbor or something.
He did write it about a lady he knew that he really disliked.
Okay,
she was a wicked queen of Numenor. She was queen of one of the wicked kings.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking that how like, she's an enchantress, but she's not an evil enchantress, Melian. And then I started thinking, like, racking my mind a bit more, and I was like, I don't think there's any. Tolkien's pretty like clear cut with like who's good and who's bad.
Mm-hmm. And magic
all the bad
usually...
women are spiders.
Magic is usually good. Really, until let's see, until the forging of the rings, I think the most magic that's done in the story is good magic. The Silmarils aren't really used for evil, and they had kind of a magical enchantment to them, but everybody just desired them, but they did evil things in their desire for them, but they weren't used magically to do evil. I think.
Well, that's partly because his view isn't that magic. Like, he takes more of the view that what's the Bible prohibits is more of the trying to control outcomes and resist the workings of God and control the future and that type of thing.
Yeah, lust,
overpower will, and versus just things happening, which we would call magic, but more of like a supernatural happening, or not natural per se. Is there you go. So a lot of Christians that are real hypersensitive to magic take issue with the fact that there's wizards and magic and stuff, but it's very much not.
Yeah, Gandalf's a wizard, but he never casts a spell.
No,
there aren't spells in Middle Earth, like except
he
for
has
this.
innate
I think
power.
this might be the only time I remember seeing a spell in the works of Tolkien. I could be wrong, but like getting him to
door. When they have to say the words and the door opens. I mean, that's kind of a spell. Yeah. I don't know.
But that's I don't remember if it was Tolkien or Lewis, but I feel like it was one of them. I think it was probably Lewis. But he was talking about the spell, like we say gospel, you know, the
a
term
word.
spell. It's more of the older word. Like we think of like, ooh, witch, you know, making a cauldron kind of spell. But you know, the term was more of the words that you use, the power of the words that you're saying in and of themselves.
Yeah, your word of faith.
Yeah. So
Name it and claim
not
it,
that kind of word of
baby.
faith.
This is why it stinks being moderns, like living in the modern times. And Tolkien is so like medieval, pre-modern.
Yeah.
Like he basically in his mind he lived in the medieval times or before.
Yeah.
I think that's why people find his work so difficult to get into. Either they really love it or they find it really difficult because it's a real, I don't want to say worldview shift, I guess kind of, but it's really more of a world shift. Like the medieval world was a very different world from our world. The pre-modern world is a very different world than the world we live in.
Yes.
And that's
and
where
Tolkien is
Tolkien lived.
Early medieval, and Lewis is a late medieval.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an apt description. Maybe that's why people get Lewis better. He's a little closer to our times.
Yeah, a little bit. But they're
Not by
closer to each
much.
other than to us.
Yeah.
I think even Lewis was the one who's talking about like the great medieval period that goes from, I don't know, like Rome to like Shakespeare or something. He calls medieval. He has a very broad medieval. But
He was a special man.
yeah, he was special man. Yeah. With magic and it being more about wanting the power over things that are gods and stuff like that. You know, obviously I'm not the first person to say this, but there are a lot of parallels to that and modern science and to a lot of the things that we do have around us that we wouldn't call magic, but kind of should fit the definition in some ways. So we do still deal with that kind of stuff. And we don't really divide it. We don't consider it. We don't think about it or debate about it. We just accept that it's there and usually just adopt it.
Yeah, it's
Usually,
because
yes.
we've relegated the word magic to something that happens with some sort of unique power, something that we don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, so then once we understand how it works, then it's no longer magic, and you're an idiot forever thinking it was magic.
Science is just magic that works.
Exactly. Sometimes.
And technology is the wand that you use to cast technology.
Yeah. Well, so much of this stuff that, like, right now, the fact that we're, you know, communicating through Wi-Fi, like, that's, to me, that's magic. Like, that's actual magic.
Yeah.
Just because you understand how it works doesn't make it any less.
Yeah. Electricity
magical.
is magic.
Yeah. People think that when, you know, when you talk about God creating ex nihilo, that somehow it's, you know, it can't be explained by science, because if it's explained by science, then it's not what the Bible is talking about or whatever. It's like, no, just because if we could ever, which we can't, know exactly how he created something or how he does something, it doesn't mean it's not how he did it. But I digress a lot.
I think I understand what you said.
Well, okay. So when you're dealing with people, and this is a very big sidebar, but when you're dealing with people in apologetics and you say, like, you know, God makes the sun rise or something, and they'd be like, oh, you think he does that by magic, but we now know that it's, you know, the orbit and gravity and all this kind of stuff. So therefore you Christians are idiots because, you know, you think God just holds the sun and makes it move with his finger or whatever they want it to be.
Sky Daddy has the sun in his hand and he throws it away when it's
Exactly.
night.
Exactly.
Okay,
And
yes.
so it's that type of thing where it's like, just because we know, or we can explain, or at least ascribe words to how things work a little bit more accurately than they used to, or more specifically, does not mean that it negates that God has done this. Like, God is still in control of gravity and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
God
And
uses
they-
means. Like he's
Exactly.
made a creation. The earth runs on rules,
Yeah.
and he's set up things, means by which that the word that he spoke, or the theme that has been sung, if we want to use Tolkienian terms for it, that they play out through these means.
Yeah. And there's always an element of mystery in it anyway. Like it's not like science is ever going to completely understand why, there's why anything exists, or why, electrons, like why electrons want to combine, or why things, I don't know what I'm talking about there. I just made something up.
Well,
But
they can observe it.
they can
They don't know
observe it and they can say,
why.
oh, this is a rule, this is how
Yeah.
it usually happens. But that doesn't answer the why.
Yeah.
Science can answer some why questions, but if you go far enough back, they can't.
Yeah.
Well, that's the role of the forgotten science of natural theology. You see those
Yeah.
things and you keep asking why, and you keep asking how, and you keep drilling down into things until you get to the end of your observable knowledge, and you say, why, how is any of this at all? And that leads you directly to theology, the queen of the sciences. It all
Right.
finds its answer in God. And you will get there if you ask the right questions and you actually search for the answers. You'll come to the fact that everything comes from God. God made everything. And you'll also come to the terrible fact of your own sin and your own inability to see him. Your blindness to him, and why you had to ask all those questions is because the blindness of your sin, and you come to the end of yourself. So like when who was it who said, man, like the ultimate question of man is whether or not to commit suicide. Was it Camus? Man, I swear it
That
was Camus.
sounds like it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
sure.
But like that,
if not, yeah, probably.
that is the natural ending point of philosophy, aka natural theology. Like you get to the point where the final thing is like, man, do I deserve to live or not? And the answer on your own merits is not. But again, because of the grace of the incarnation, a taste of which we've gotten from this chapter, there is a better answer, that we can not only have life now, but life eternally through Christ. And that's where those intersections of philosophy into theology, meaning coming to the end of your knowledge, finding your own inadequacy, and then hope in the gospel, repentance and belief in Christ, makes all the difference. If we had honest philosophers, but it seems like anymore all the philosophers want to do is just sit around and ask if we live in a simulation or not.
Yeah, or the multiverse, or like string theory, and it's like,
yeah,
what are you clowns coming up with here? Like,
yeah,
it seems like they come up with all these preposterous things to try and
well,
get
sure.
rid of God, and then like
It's,
you've got the God of the gaps. And it's like,
yeah,
have you read about your gaps?
yeah. Let's compare
on,
gaps here. Yeah, it's dishonest because they're trying to come up with a story to fit the facts that they don't want to drill further into.
Yeah.
Because if you drill further into those facts, you're not going to like what you find. Your sin nature won't like what you find.
It's almost like Romans 1.
Yeah, it's like God knew what he was talking about when he had Paul writing that.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought?
Huh.
I like how many times we end up back in Romans 1, no matter what chapter in the Silmarillion we're doing, we're talking about Romans 1.
Yeah. It's a huge book, or a huge
Foundational.
chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it deals with a lot of the debates and issues and things that we're dealing with. Like a lot of it is in Romans 1 or in Genesis 1 to 3.
Yeah.
A lot of it's in those places. So it's kind of the foundational stuff that we're having to deal with right now.
Yeah.
So
thanks to both the Enlightenment and postmodernity.
Yeah.
I think it'll be really, it's exciting to see, and maybe it's just because I'm in those circles now with other fellow like-minded people, but it does seem like there's enough of a resurgence that we're not having to go back to medieval, because there are certainly things that are very, as we would say, medieval about the medieval time period that we don't want to go back to, for sure. My son has a disability, and I was just thinking yesterday, like, how blessed we are to live in America at this day and age, because pretty much any other time, being short of within the ministry scope of Jesus and being healed, would have been a real rough go for him had he survived it all. So there's certainly a lot of good things that we do have, but yeah, recovering so much of what we've lost in the Enlightenment, that we're stripped down into materialism, and I'm certainly a victim of that thinking. I'm typically a very analytical person. It is hard for me to not, try to make things like, that's what I was struggling, through history, like, or especially the Narnia series kind of would trip me up, but even just the Lord of the Rings trilogy, when you have different people representing a Christ figure, Gandalf kind of has this element, and Aragorn
Frodo
has
has
kind
this
of element.
element.
Frodo and Sam is, it's
Aragorn has this
it
element.
It can't be just all these guys. There's only one Christ. It really confuses my mind.
Well, Pilgrim's Progress was already written, so we can't do other ones.
You got your 1-to-1. He already mastered that whole genre. It's over.
Well, and what's funny about that is, as great as that story is, like, for the Christian walk and very encouraging, it's not as I can't even think of the word. You're not in the atmosphere of Pilgrim's Progress like you are in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's more didactic than something like Lord of the Rings is. So
right.
What
the purpose
Pilgrim's
is different.
Progress teaches openly is what Tolkien's work teaches you implicitly rather than explicitly. Like, you get so many of the same themes and even more themes, obviously, because Lord of the Rings is longer than Pilgrim's Progress, so you have more pages to fit more into. So I don't want to be unfair to Bunyan, but his goal, I think, was to be very straightforward and clear. But I think there's a level of clarity to Lord of the Rings on those kinds of, well, it really all of Tolkien's work, right? Even in the Silmarillion too, but of those important themes, but seeing them play out in like an actual story rather than a story that's built around the ideas. Like, the ideas occur within the story. The story is not made to make those ideas come to life. If see what I mean? Cart before horse kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Even Narnia doesn't do that. Like, Narnia has way more one-to-one symbolism than Lord of the Rings does, and even it doesn't go about it the same way as Pilgrim's Progress.
Right.
And each one, I mean, they all have their merits. I don't want to degrade Bunyan against the Tolkien and Lewis.
It's a different genre.
Different genre. Yeah. You have to read the genre for what it is.
And I think that there are other books that do this well, where they split apart. They take one aspect. Like, I think of Tale of Two Cities, like the idea of sacrificing one person for another, sacrificing, dying for another person. Like, that's in that book. And there is a character that is like does that in a way that's very similar to what Jesus did. But I mean, he's still a character in historical fiction. he's just a human being. I'm sure he does something sinful, in the book. I can't really remember the book all that well, but it makes it interesting. You read through it, and then when it does come, it hits, and you do feel that one part, even even if the rest of the book doesn't quite match one-to-one with Jesus, you still hit that part, and you think, okay, there is dying for somebody else is a huge deal. Dying with love as being the thing that causes that, like, that's a big deal. And you see that. And I'm in this Quo Vadis book that I'm reading, forgiveness is a huge part of it. Like, forgiving somebody and the power of forgiveness, that's huge. And when you see fallen people doing it too, then sometimes you can realize that it's even greater when someone who is not sinful does it as well.
Yeah, Tolkien and Lewis both were really big on the importance. And while sometimes, like, the quotes that, like, I would hear read about Tolkien and his view that he didn't want to preach at people, he wanted the story to kind of, you needed to hear it in the story. The problem that I would take with that is that it's like, but we do affirm the necessity of special revelation. Like, we can't just have good stories and just hopefully people will figure it out for themselves. That's a Romans 1 thing too. Like, you can see we are without excuse. But on the same side, we can't divorce the gospel message from the story, which is special revelation. Like, we have the entire scripture, and it is a story. And that's why I
both
love
Old
that.
Testament and New Testament are filled with stories for a reason.
Absolutely. And the connection and the full, like, the more you see the connection between the old and the new and the fulfillment and all of that, it's just this cohesive, very complex story that just blows your mind that it could be written by multiple authors over thousands of years if it weren't true.
And be so cohesive.
Right.
Yeah.
But then that's why I love that Lewis, that's kind of what brought Lewis to recognize the truth of the gospel, is he was starting to see the common themes in the stories and was like, wait, maybe there's something more than nothing.
Yeah.
Coming from his materialism.
Yeah. So it's something more than nothing. Yeah.
And that's what I think Tolkien does a great job of. Very well, because so many non-believers love the story for so many reasons, but that's because he just did such a good job of bringing those truths into a story like that that you can't help but like it.
Yeah.
If he had just not made Melian so submissive.
Cancel him.
Yeah.
Is Melian a classic Catholic trad wife?
Yes.
Did she wear a head covering?
Probably.
They were nightingales.
She just had nightingales sitting on her head.
Yeah, she's kind of got some Mary-like stuff to her too. But she has children with her husband.
Yes, and that's
Catholics don't like that.
Very important to the history of Middle Earth. Very, very, very important.
Yes, and probably, she, even though this chapter is like a page and a half, it's very important to remember and pay attention to her.
It is crazy, like, for as short of a chapter as this is, how much you could just read it and not pay attention to it at all and just move on. Like, that
was weird. Moving on.
Such a moment. Yeah, it's totally weird, but it is such a momentous. It's such a momentous brief look in the history of Middle Earth that makes such a huge difference on what, like, every chapter after this, except maybe the chapter that tells you the map of Middle Earth. Every other chapter has some relationship to what happened in this chapter in some way or another, whether it's the main story of that chapter or something in the background of it. It all comes back to Thingol and Melian.
Especially your beloved like mainstay characters.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't read the Silmarillion, they're connected to the characters you do know from the movies if you haven't read the books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's the grandmama of them all.
Yeah.
And nobody listened to her. That's going to be the other thing we're going to notice. Nobody ever listens to Melian, and it will drive you crazy.
Well, she's being submissive.
She should have told.
Maybe if
she should have told the words to Thingol, and he could have ordered people around, and they would have listened.
Yeah, this is Tolkien's lesson to husbands to listen to their wives' wisdom before it destroys your entire kingdom. Spoiler alert. unless it involves a fruit of some kind, then don't listen.
Yeah, if it involves fresh produce, do not listen to your wife.
It's so complicated.
Listen to her at all times except in the produce aisle.
Okay.
Didn't say obey, just heed the wisdom.
Heed. All right. Should we buy pomegranates today? No. Not a chance.
And to make sure you don't forget, Nick, tattoo it on your arm like memento. So you can look down and remind yourself.
You brought up pomegranates, and I don't know if it's because after going to the Creation Museum or what, but I cut that open and I was like, this kind of feels like the forbidden fruit a little bit. There's like it's kind of like cutting open like a dragon heart or something. It just was a little weird.
They're so good, strange. I love pomegranates.
They're like little jewels. Like they look like ruby corn.
Tiny little ruby corns.
They got that little crunch to them.
Yeah.
I love pomegranates.
I hope if anyone's still listening to us that they go out and get pomegranate because of this.
The only reason I would say that it's not is because they pull that fruit off the tree. It's going to take them ages to get to it.
And Eve how many of
would
those
have had
little...
some time to think things through.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got lots of time to reconsider your sin as you're trying to break open a pomegranate.
Yeah.
We're stupid, man. People are stupid and stubborn.
God should have made it a pineapple.
That would have been really hard.
Yeah, it'd been like, no.
They could have eaten it down to the core, and then their tongues would have fallen off or been eaten by acid.
Yeah, that's right. I get a sore throat if I have too much pineapple.
Do you really?
That's weird.
Yeah.
It'll hurt my tongue the same way it like Cap'n Crunch hurts your tongue. Like
cutting it up?
Yeah.
You're not supposed to eat the rind.
Oh. I thought it was just the leaves. We always cut off the bottom part and just eat the leaves.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about pineapple, not. I was like, am I supposed to take the outer part off of the Cap'n Crunch before I eat it? That's a lot of work for cereal.
Yeah. Just on the crunch berries.
Just the crunch berries. I love that cereal too, but yeah, it destroys my mouth.
That cereal and Lucky Charms were my favorite cereal as a kid, and I had really funny like kid version names of that cereal.
Y'all clearly didn't have Cinnamon Toast Crunch when you were a kid.
Oh,
it gets too soggy too fast.
I love Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
You can eat it just straight out of the box.
I love it when
you
it's
don't need
soggy.
to put anything in it. That's a gold medal.
It's good as just hand cereal. You're right. I also miss the French Toast Crunch.
Oh yeah,
that was good too.
Like little breads,
tiny little breads in your bowl. Apparently, somebody's still making it out there somewhere, but I haven't seen it at the cereal aisle.
They went through a phase of having weird cereals. Maybe they still are, but it was like I would go down the cereal aisle and it's like unicorn cereal or like marshmallows or Hershey's Kisses cereal. And it's like, what are you people doing here?
Are these?
I'm pretty sure my liver's like still stained from like eating Trix cereal.
Yeah, those dyes really never do come out.
That's why it's for kids.
They have more
Yeah,
years
I
for their
don't
livers
see-
to
To
regenerate.
process it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see it anymore. I can't see it anymore at the stores, so only kids can see it.
That's
Yeah.
right. Tricks are for kids. It's just like somebody wearing the ring, right? Only Sauron can see you,
Yes,
and
exactly.
he'll tell you,
Yeah.
"I see you."
It's true.
Oh, okay. One last thing. Did you guys see the news that there's talks underway for a new Lord of the Rings trilogy to be produced by Peter Jackson?
By Peter Jackson?
He is going to be actively involved. If not as a director, then he would be like an executive producer. That's exactly my thought. Why would you do that?
Like, if
Why?
anything, redo The Hobbit.
Yeah. And
That's a
take
good point.
take the what's his face Del Toro effects out of it and make it actually look like it's related to Lord of the Rings. That would be cool.
There are other books too. Like if you're going to do something good, but what they're probably going to do is make it palatable for modern sensibilities.
Probably.
And so then it'll be terrible.
They'll try
There's
to
a
make
part of me
Sam and
that
Frodo
wants to
gay.
be hope. Oh no, that would be so sad.
Mm-hmm.
But that's
I want to
what
be hopeful because I like almost all things Lord of the Rings, but I don't know.
and really, can you imagine a different Frodo, a different Gandalf?
No, although I feel like Frodo could have been, but it would like Frodo's older than he is in the movie.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
But then I feel like after seeing those movies, like if they did him as like a 45-year-old guy, you'd be like, no,
Yeah.
that's weird. Like,
yeah. He still has, well, you know what? Even for a Hobbit, I think his level of development would be similar to the age that Elijah Wood was when he was in that movie. Because like basically hobbits become adults at 50.
Yeah, but he's looked like a 16-year-old.
Yeah, that's true. I think he
Maybe
was
it's
only
his
maybe 21.
eyes.
He has a baby face. He still has a baby
He
face.
does.
Maybe they can just get him again.
They're just so like recent. I don't understand why
He could play Bilbo.
Oh man.
Could you imagine? Sam could be the gaffer. Well, Sean Astin could be the gaffer. Oh,
Samuel Rennihan can be in it.
Make Ian McKellen the
Mhm.
voice of Sauron.
That would be good. Yeah, just move everybody around.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would throw up.
Sean
But
Bean is Aragorn,
oh,
and Vigo is Boromir.
oh, I love it.
They could redeem some characters a little bit more. Like Faramir.
Andy Serkis could play Wormtongue.
He would be good at that.
Yeah, he would.
You know, the guy who played Wormtongue was in Dune, in David Lynch's Dune. And played a very similar character as well. Peter DeVries.
Can't have Christopher Lee though.
Ugh, I know.
Oh well.
Love
Just
that
have
guy.
to find some other like classic actor who's been around for a long time.
Man, so I finally finished the audiobook of The Children of Hurin, read by Christopher Lee. Doggone it. Man, it's probably the best audiobook I've ever listened to. Like when he voices Glaurung the dragon, it is legitimately scary. He's so good.
I believe it.
If for anybody out there who has Audible, it's one credit. Everybody needs to just get that book. It is phenomenal. Like the book itself is good, but like his reading of it is just that much. Just makes it that much better. So the Children of Hurin is an expanded version of the tale of Turin Turambar from the Silmarillion. For anybody who doesn't know, so it's taking additional versions and texts and sort of collating them all together into a novel form. They did the same thing with Baron and Luthien, and was there another one? There was another story that they did it with as well, but I can't remember which. Oh, Fall of Gondolin. That's what it was. So anyway, I was just told that my internet connection is unstable, which is very strange.
I could tell.
Yeah, it got a little glitchy, but I wasn't sure if that was mine or not.
Oh no. Yeah, we're probably
I
getting a
looked back
storm.
at mine
Yeah.
to see if my thing was blinking.
The only time my Starlink gets weird is if we start having like heavy rain or heavy snow, and then it'll like kind of blink a little bit, but it won't go out, but it'll just get like strange. So, well, thank you all again for another stimulating conversation. I always enjoy these episodes, and for anyone who wants to see where we are online, check out the show notes. Our link tree is there to our Facebook page, Twitter feed, and the public post for the reading challenge. It's never too late to get involved with the 2023 Literary Baptist Reading Challenge. I have enjoyed seeing some folks updating their progress on Facebook, and we have an associated hashtag that you can use as well. So, all right. Well, thank you all very much. May Monway keep you in the one, and peace out.